Richard Bruce here, and this is a update of the report that I made when I saw the TI television channel, which the participants of that channel said that they had created it to set the record straight from how poorly they thought that the Vice documentary portrayed them as. And furthermore, one of the participants or co-founders of that channel, Shane Gibbs, says that he has a correspondence of one of the Vice crew telling him that he was prevented from publishing such and such or some part of it, and therefore also Kira, the other co-founder, I think, was saying that basically that movie was not what Vice had originally intended, and somebody told them to do something else with it. And in any case, it was designed to make them appear poor. Now, when I saw that, because as you, if you're a targeted individual and/or you are familiar with this whole TI thing, the paranoia level is pretty high, and so you're already kind of stressed out. That's the whole point of targeting, is that to make them so stressed out that you can already start assigning negative things to something that where it doesn't exist. But but I decided to investigate this because when I saw that testimony, I was like, wow, okay, this is wow, I mean, maybe this was, maybe Vice is. And so, but that didn't change. I mean, because I was basically happy with how our U.S. version, The Nightmare World of Gang Stalking, turned out. I thought it turned out great, and I even said that I thought that the psychiatrist, kind of adding or alluding to, or possibly that it is a mental illness. That's a common thing in a good documentary, is to have an opposing view to something where the proof is not shown. You can't absolutely prove what's going on, which is the whole thing about gang stalking. They do it in such a way that proof is hard to come by, but it does exist. In fact, one of the next things that we're thinking of doing is putting together something that really shows the proof. There's this one piece in a documentary that shows people honking as they drive by this one house, and the guy sets up a video camera to record it and starts suing all of these people that are doing this, and that's very good, very clear proof that there is gang stalking going on. So when I looked into this, and I got a hold of one of the co-founders of TI Television, Shane Gibbs, and I conversed with him, and basically, their feeling about Vice came out. He was quite contemptuous, and he's even got some other lawsuit going on, which at the time I thought he had meant that he was suing Vice. So I apologize, I made a mistake, and in my communications with Sebastian about this, Sebastian Ischar from Vice, who was the lead reporter on our U.S. version. However, they are not actually suing Vice, but they are not happy with Vice, let's put it that way. And he even, said something like, he wouldn't trust them as far as he could throw them. So because they're fellow TIs, and I thought that these gentlemen seemed like reasonable, rational people, and so that's why I wanted to reach out to him and talk to him about all this. And the more that I communicated with Shane, unfortunately, the more I began to realize, wait a minute, there's something a little bit wrong here. And I'll just say what my point of view is, and what I want to try to do is get away from unduly criticizing or getting into tit for tat, back and forth, arguing and so forth. But I'll just put it to you this way: basically, he doesn't even want to talk to me anymore. And the reason that developed is because at a certain point in the conversation, I said, I talked, because what happened was, and let me just tell you the next step in this, looking into this, I did actually hear back from Sebastian Ischar, who was the lead reporter, again, for our U.S. version, The Nightmare World of Gang Stalking. And in 2 separate emails from him that were very clear, I was convinced, at least, that he didn't know anything about this. And as I considered his reply, it put me at ease, first of all. And second of all, and I could be wrong, like I said, but I felt that at least he didn't know anything about it, and chances are the Vice people didn't know anything about it either. In other words, a conspiracy doesn't exist. However, I have not seen the proof that Shane says he has, that's part of a case that he can't show it to me, because that's why he wouldn't show that evidence to me, because he says it's part of another case. I thought that case was against Vice, but it wasn't. It's apparently something else. So he couldn't show it to me, so I haven't seen it, so I don't know. But and and there may be some very interesting, damning information in there. But on the other hand, from what I was able to see, I don't think that Sebastian over here in our U.S. branch, you might say, of the Vice machine, knew anything about what they were saying. Apparently, was a conspiracy to make them look poor. And in fact, as the more that I talked with Shane, the more that I felt that, well, okay, it's beginning to sound like that if they look poorly in the documentary, which by the way, I don't think they look that poorly, but there was a few replies of this one guy named Richard that, and it kind of looked like, and then, showing that one poor woman who was an educated person, unlike me, but she was homeless. And so it kind of did, not too bad, but it kind of made them look a little bit poorer than I would have liked, and that's why I was especially happy that we didn't look that way, at least in my opinion, and in the opinion of a lot of people who have seen that show. There's a 5-to-1 positive rating, despite the flood of negative comments that we know we're going to get of people, possibly shills, saying, "Oh, Nutter's crazy," yeah, okay, total BS, just to dishearten people, if nothing else, who might look at that and wonder if our government really does have a targeting program, which they do. Now, what happened was, as I presented that information to Shane Gibbs of his TI television channel, in which the whole inspiration of the channel was to set the record straight because of how poorly Vice portrayed them, I presented what Sebastian had said to me in those emails, assuring me that I don't think he knew anything about it, and it kind of starts to look like maybe there really isn't a conspiracy or something else, but I'm waiting to see. But that's the way it kind of looked to me, without being divisive and offensive, because it's very easy to be contentious and divisive and offensive. However, he got apparently offended or whatnot, and then one of the first things he says is that I had said that I thought that our U.S. version of the Vice documentary was, that I was angry and sore about how it turned out, which was never the case. I've never said that, because it actually turned out pretty darn good. And we didn't look like crap, by the way. I mean, I thought all of us, yes, even Billy with his, with his outburst, that actually was, that emotional outburst gave it something. And we came off as rational. Whereas I just don't think they fared quite as well in the UK version, but that's all up to debate. But a lot of people agree that I've talked to, that our version, at least, we came off looking rational, and a lot of people, I mean, literally hundreds of thousands of people seeing this have been informed of the gang stalking issue that didn't have a freaking clue that it ever existed. So what Shane said to me next was, then, what are you going to do with this whole reptilian thing? I mean, you didn't mention that in court. You can't say anything about that in court. I said, and I'm like, well, I'm sorry, but I've got evidence, and yeah, I will take it into court. But I understand that information has to be controlled, because you can't just throw it on people right away. You have to try to, present it in a rational way, and keep people from, getting too upset over it because they're not ready to hear, they're screaming about, reptilian aliens or demons or devils or something in people's face. They're going to freak out. And I understand that you have to present that in the right way, and you have to control it. But then he goes on to say, when I wouldn't, agree with him that the TI documentary that Vice made for us here in the U.S. was negative, then he goes on to say that he doesn't feel the whole reptilian thing has any place in the TI community. So at that point, that kind of, cuts myself and a whole lot of other people out of the loop as far as they are concerned. So with their group and their group of TIs that, are working together and agreeing and maybe getting stuff done and so forth, maybe, getting together a lawsuit, or, raising public awareness or raising money or something to inform the public and try to change this whole targeting that we are experiencing, who do believe in the non-human issue, and in fact, I myself will continue to maintain that I believe that non-humans are behind it. Ultimately, they're using humans, but non-humans are behind it, i.e., even in indwelling devils, and or also the physical ones that are here, the shapeshifters, and working for the ones that may be working underground in these underground bases. We're all being duped. I mean, we don't know what's down there. We don't know what's out in space because guess what? We're cattle. And the scripture even supports that. Adam was made of the dust, and God says to the serpent, dust shall you eat all the days of your life. So in my opinion, it's there, and there's also, as you know from my channel, there's physical, undeniable evidence. And by undeniable, I mean there is no camera expert, no film expert, nobody, not one person who stepped forward and could step forward for any amount of money to prove that the footage that I have gotten can be recreated as demonstrating that it is only a camera error and not non-humans, as I have shown, with features of horns, scales, claws, discoloration, you name it. And slit eyes and all that stuff. So it's there, and I think that being divisive and just saying hey, we're not even going to listen. You all really are crazy to believe that, and that's I think that's not helpful. And what I wanted to say about that is that we as TIs, one thing I've talked about this in other videos, but basically we are in a situation where it's very easy to be offended and for things to get hot and contentious. And many times I've been talking with people in the TI community, all of a sudden to have them start acting weird and speaking, things either against me or, or behaving in a way that just made me think that, wait a minute, this, maybe the stress of being a TI has got to him. But anyways, it's hard to work with somebody who's not rational. It's hard to work with somebody who can't keep from being divisive. As far as the TI issue goes, and this is, I don't mean to separate myself as far as from my Christian faith, but the fact of the matter is that if I am too rigid on my beliefs as far as being inclusive in what we're trying to do here, then we're going to lose any traction that we have. And I think that's really a key point that we need to look at. And one of the ways I want to describe this is that, let's say somebody comes at me with an opinion that I really don't agree with. Okay, let's say somebody comes at me, maybe a man of a Muslim faith, and he says, the real enemy is jinn, and you have to join Islam, and that's the only way to go. Otherwise, you're surely going to not be able to solve this problem. Or maybe it's an atheist telling me, hey, it's the CIA, and the real thing about alien abduction is that they're trying to breed us out, or something like that, or whatever it is. Okay, whatever opinion is may not be what I believe. I'm just going to say to that person, okay, man, I hear what you're saying, and I just need to be respectfully say that I don't think that's the case. But let's work together anyway to whatever we can do together. Let's as TIs who are suffering from targeting now, because we're targets for life. I mean, people got implants. People are, once they identify you as an enemy, they keep it up to minimize you, destroy you, get you to commit suicide, get you depressed, destroy your relationships, destroy your financial life, and so we're already in a desperate, dire situation, and we don't need to be fighting each other where they have a network and money and everything against us, and we have what? just each other, basically, who know about this and who care about this, and maybe our loved ones who can believe and know about this, and some other people, rare souls that can hear our testimony online and realize that we're telling the truth. But no one cares about this issue as much as we do. So if we allow our differences to divide us, I think that we're going to lose out the gate. They're going to win before they've even attacked us. And it may even be that this divisiveness is the strategy that David Icke describes pretty well, which is that, just keep them divided, keep them arguing, keep them fighting among themselves, and we don't hardly have to do anything. They're so divided and powerless because they're so angry at each other for their different points of view about life in general, and or who the targeting people are, or whatever. So that's really important. I think that we just kind of do that as and have that in our thinking, that we're not going to be divisive. Just, if you have a severe difference. I mean, I realize there's some things that you can't overlook, and somebody comes up to me and starts screaming, the Bible is BS and you're brainwashed by it, wake up, man. you know I'm gonna I all I can do is just say, friend, please don't be that way. I mean, realize I have been friends, by the way, with people of different faiths. I've been friends with atheists and done stuff with them. I've been friends with Muslims, and like, for instance, I was friends with a Muslim guy, and I knew he was a Muslim. He knew I was a Christian, and we could get along just fine and do stuff together. We were doing UFO hunting, and we actually got some UFOs, by the way. But the thing about it is this thing of getting stuck on our differences is probably part of their divide and conquer strategy. So let's just, if you do have a difference of opinion with somebody, if you're even if it might be very divisive, or like, I think, for instance, I will say one of the participants, Billy, of our American version here, the Nightmare World of Gang Stalking, he didn't contact either myself or Derek when he was given the information. And I don't know what happened. Maybe he was upset about how it turned out, or or what. But I was wondering if, because he thought that it was a Christian group out of Mississippi that was doing his targeting, I mean, I don't mean to laugh at him, but I mean, I'm sorry, it's just not that. It's advanced. This takes, I mean, advanced government, high-funded planning, because it goes from state to state, as many TIs will tell you. The stalking is seamless from state to state. So and so I was wondering if maybe he didn't want to contact me because I was a Christian, and maybe that turned him off to the whole thing. But there was somebody else there, Derek, who was also, by the way, was a gay man, and he had his information as well, because I know that Sebastian Ishtar was nice enough, and he didn't have to do that, by the way. He's a professional reporter. He doesn't have to hook us up, but he did, and he stuck his neck out for us. So I thank him for that. But unfortunately, it didn't. In this case, it didn't work out. But I was able to contact Derek, who was one of the participants in our movie, and establish a relationship with him. By the way, he has a safe house in 29 Palms, which he's got together with a few other guys there. You might want to check it out if you want to contact him. Anybody who wants to contact him, let me know. I'll ask him if he wants to be contacted and give him an email. But I mean, that's interesting that he's got a safe house for TIs in 29 Palms, California, in case you're interested. Okay, so and I just want to close by saying that I got into the paranoia aspect of this and suspecting Vice of a conspiracy too quickly. Okay, I fell into that, and so I apologize that I came off like, hey, I sent this email to Sebastian, and it's this certain date, and I was, like, because I was thinking, because I got kind of caught up in what they were saying, and I still don't know the full extent of it. But I mean, if they started a whole channel over this, inspired by how poorly they were turned out, and they feel it's a conspiracy, well, I was ready to think that maybe it was. And by the way, Shane Gibbs expressed to me over email that he thought our American version was a hit piece. I call it hit piece, like subtly designed to make us look poor, or whatever, or to discredit us. Really, it's they're all working for the gang stalkers to just subtly imply that we're a bunch of crazy people. But I don't think that that's the case. First of all, I can name some specific facts out of the Nightmare World of Gang Stalking. First of all, not only did Sebastian or whoever was, I don't know who's ultimately in charge. It's their baby, by the way. I mean, I'm not gonna, there's a limited amount I can say about the movie they want to make about me. Luckily, it turned out pretty good in my opinion. But he included the part about the reptilians, and the whole reason why I had done this was because I'm going to assume that there's non-humans involved, because the only thing I uploaded that started my gang stalking, which was so obvious, like 15 minutes after I uploaded my first full 40-minute feature in February of 2013, helicopters, hovering over my place like it's a drug bust. and the only thing I'm showing in that movie was the non-humans, I have to think non-humans are involved. So that was the reason why I thought that was what started my stalking. And not only did he say or include the part about the reptilians, but even showed the reptilian shape-shifting footage from Keanu's claw, which in my opinion is pretty much my best reptilian shape-shifting bust, although I have some others that really do compare. I think the Harrison Ford's the horns coming out of his head. I named the movie Horny Toad Harrison Ford. Basically is pretty straightforward evidence, because I mean there's just no way a camera can form those horns. So but that footage was shown, so and that can't be in the interests of who's really behind this, in my opinion. And then furthermore, other damning information and things that I said. For instance, I was quoted in the movie as saying that, this can't be some sort of small, rogue faction group somewhere. This has to be government wide, government sanctioned, worldwide, world government wide. And so, I mean, the fact that those elements were included, showing some of the helicopter footage, and other things. It just doesn't make sense that was that was helpful to the gang stalkers, okay, in some way, to subtly make us look like nutters or whatever. So my opinion there is that basically I think that Shane's assertion that was a hit piece just doesn't work, definitely doesn't work. And also, I'm inclined to think that Sebastian, who also saw previewed their UK version before it came out, the Meet the Targeted Individual community, I think that his assertion that it was not a hit piece either is probably right. And if they did end up looking poorly, it might have just been their own behavior, because I've seen some other movies that Vice has made, like that one about the largest American militia. I forget the name of it. It's got over 1.5 million views. I mean, those people really look bad. I will say, and I even commented at that movie, boy, I hope ours doesn't turn out like this, because I mean, those people really look bad. But I think that it may be, and I'm not saying this couldn't also happen in a conspiracy way, but I think it may be because the people, it reflected what they saw. That's the spirit that came through in their reporting, which I think was pretty. I think so far that I've seen is honest. I mean, I will say a lot of their Vice reports are kind of weird, and I don't, I'm not as much of a fan of them. But I will say this: if Sebastian Ishtar was largely responsible for the content, and I think he was from the credit in the movie, I'm glad I got him, and I'm really glad I got him, because I mean I think it turned out pretty well. I mean, that was a good movie. It was interesting. I mean, I'm of course I'm the worst person to say because I'm heavily biased. I mean, I basically starred in that show, but I thought it turned out pretty well and interesting. It's more interesting than a lot of the Vice movies that I've seen. I mean, like a lot of them kind of lose my attention, but I thought that this turned out pretty well. So I think that once again, I would just say that, if we get caught up in our own negativity, we're going to lose out. And I think for Shane and Kira and the rest of them in TI television, it's kind of too bad, because I think that they're basically decent guys and they are trying to work together to get our problem solved. But what we have here is, I think, kind of a shooting themselves in the foot a little bit, and and being divisive like Shane was with me, and then I summarized this in as most gentlemanly way as I could in a final email to him, because I knew at that point he didn't want to talk to me, but I just said, I need to say that I think that this divisiveness is a problem. We could have communicated in a way that didn't cut out people that have a different belief system about what's happening here, or in general. And he didn't answer, and probably won't answer, and doesn't want to talk to me anymore. And furthermore, wouldn't give me Kira's email so that I could contact him and see if he feels the same way, or what the story was, because that was part of my investigation. I'm going to still see if I can get a hold of him, but I'm kind of feeling like they probably don't want to associate with me, especially if I've said what I've said here about that whole thing and about TI television. But you know, again, I'm not sure because I haven't seen, because he says it was involved in a case and he can't show me the evidence, so I don't know what their evidence was. But from everything that I saw, from my interaction with Shane and from my communication with Sebastian, I think that there's probably, you know, so far from what I can see, is really not a conspiracy. It's that their own behavior is what caused them, if they did look. And I didn't think they looked too poorly. There was one guy, like I said, Richard, who said something contradictory, and then a few minutes later it looked like what he was saying didn't add up, and that was the worst thing about it. But and the way it was put together, I don't think it was first of all, they didn't have somebody as good as Sebastian behind it, and I think that's part of why it didn't, you know, turn out as. And there was a lot of people that were highly critical of that film, but I didn't think it would turn out that bad. I watched it again, and you know, I think it was still interesting. And the fact remains, and this is the point. The fact remains. Look, even if, let's say I were to decide that, you know, basically there was a conspiracy against us, or somebody had gotten in and kind of corrupted it and had the guy say something that kind of made us look nuts or whatever. I wouldn't have been, because I first of all half expected that, and second of all, you know, this is a matter of planting the seeds. You know, a lot of people that see it, if not the majority, are going to think we're nuts anyway. But it plants the seeds. It starts the conversation. It starts to make people aware. I mean, you know, as you guys may know from my channel, most of the people that see my stuff scream nutter in my face, or, you know, you're crazy, blah, 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 you know. But it's a matter of putting the information out there in as clear and reasonable a way as we can, and hopefully changing minds. And I think this thing with Vice was a positive development for us. And I think for them to make a channel based on how pissed they were about how poorly they looked in that movie was a sizable mistake. And it makes them weary to do, you know, more work with us if we're just going to be a bunch of negative, paranoid people bashing them because their movie about us didn't turn out quite the way we liked it. And I think another thing too, this is really important, I was taken a little bit aback by how because this is the first time I got in a movie that, you know, had that many, you know, views, because as you guys know, my channel is highly blocked, or at least it looks that way to me. You know, I got good reptilian shapeshifter movies getting like this much attention compared to movies, channels that suck. Okay, but so the fact is that it was exposure. Okay, it was exposure that did us good, and so the fact that they showed this and that a lot of people saw it is a major plus. We got exposure that we never would have gotten. And even if it was something that you know, that I wasn't, you know, if I was really unhappy with some, you know, part of the movie or something like that, or, you know, I felt it made us look crazy, I would have said, hey, look, let's be, you know, let's just use it for what it was, and don't get too pissed, because look, we got exposure. But I was taken aback by all that negativity, and I did complain to Sebastian about this one ad that was a Facebook ad that just showed only me. But I realized in my email to Sebastian that I had been overly negative about it, because I just wasn't used to seeing that volume of negative comments and taking the majority, because as you know, I control the comments at my channel, because I just get flooded with stuff that would just even turn people away from even wanting to watch my movies, or, you know, and also work to discredit. So I can't, you know, I have to, I put a tight control over it. But you know, that's to be expected. So I think what happened was the Vice, the people from the TI television channel, you know, Kira and Shane and the rest of them may have been overly upset over that, and maybe not prepared for, because I mean, even Kira said, you know, hey, it's you know, we're offended by this because there's like 500,000 people screaming nutter at us. And so that's how I knew that they were upset from the amount of negative comments that movie got. But on the other hand, it's to be expected. So I think that there might be a misunderstanding, and on their part, and at least I hope so. And you know, regardless of that, if it was a hit piece, or it was, you know, there was nefarious motivations involved, I gotta say it worked out pretty well for us here in the U.S. But I will say this: I do think that the reason why we came off looking better is because we were more rational overall as people in dealing with this. I would say to Shane or anybody who wants to know who is really behind gang stalking, it is a certain non-human you may have heard of, Satan, who wants you to go on thinking he doesn't exist and that non-humans are not real, because that is the world that they have created for us to make anybody who mentions that sound like they are crazy. But it's all going to be revealed very soon, and everybody's going to see it, and everybody's going to know that people like us who were talking about it were right. And another reason to know who this is that is doing this to us as an advantage is that Satan and all of his people that are doing this gang stalking to us, devils and humans that are controlled by him, is that they laugh at all the efforts that we do, whether they're legal efforts, whether they're communications efforts. They just laugh at all that stuff because they know all that is essentially powerless against him. But what they do fear is the power of God. That is the real God, Jehovah, and his son Jesus Christ. Okay? And that's the only power that they fear. They know that as long as you don't call upon his name, as long as you don't look to him, they don't have anything to worry about you. They can shut you up in so many different ways. I'm still breathing. I'm still here because God protected me. And he protected me because he knew that I would serve him and be useful to him. And therefore, he has protected me up to this point when they tried to kill me, as I've said. So I would just say to you that, you got to realize this is a controlled situation. It's not like anything can happen. God's word says that he knows the beginning unto the end. And you have a choice to make. Are you going to understand who's really doing this? Are you going to open your eyes? Are you going to look to the creator of both these creatures and us humans? Are you going to look to him? Are you going to ask of him? Are you going to read his word in the authorized King James Bible to understand him and know him and follow him and do what he says and align yourself with his thinking? Because I didn't believe in any of this stuff. Okay, I grew up in a secular household in Calabasas, California, which is essentially Los Angeles, and my parents were secular and they didn't believe in any of this stuff. But I came to believe in my early 20s when I was homeless, once again, living in my truck, working as a handyman. I got these pamphlets, and when I read that prayer and I read that thing talking about how God comes into your life, I decided to try it. I decided to try that prayer. And when I did, I found out that God quietly speaks to people in subtle ways so that other people and even themselves can't know for sure, but you will know that God's leading you along. I can tell you, listen, friend, I know that you're skeptical. I just want to tell you something, okay? I was an hardcore atheist that didn't believe that the consciousness could extend beyond the physical brain. It was all just delusions and people having hallucinations as their brain was shutting down. That's all that life after death, near-death experience stuff was about. But I can tell you that what happened to me when I tried that prayer, I just said a simple prayer from a pamphlet that I got from Pastor Tony Alamo on the streets of Los Angeles, just saying to say a prayer to be saved in Jesus Christ's name so that you can avoid going to hell and go to heaven where there is a life free of pain, sorrow, and death. And when I did that, God came into my life and showed me that he's real and led me along slowly, very slowly, incrementally. You have to learn these things slowly as you experience it and as you're ready for it. But the more you align yourself with God, the more he starts coming in and showing you stuff. And what he really does is show you his words, which they were all gibberish to me before I became a Christian, before I received his spirit, before I accepted his son on the cross for my sin. But when I read his words and he showed me through the Spirit, I believe it's something that he adds to your mind, revealed the codes and just amazing stuff that he's shown me. And this whole thing, friend, is about what are you going to do about God, okay? God who created you. Every single day that you live the life of a person who is not acknowledging your Creator, you are committing a crime. You are doing something wrong. It's like being a child who refuses to accept his parents at all. Okay, but that child needs his parents to live. But it's like not talking to them, not doing what they say. And that's the situation we're in. That's why it's so scary. And I'm not saying I understand this whole thing. Believe me, I'm gonna be humble about what I don't know about all this. But what I do know is that this thing about these non-humans doing this to us, who are truly behind it, all these they're by the way, biblically they're called beasts or beasts of the field. The same thing, beast is used to describe a non-sentient animal like a horse or a pig. Beasts or beasts of the field is used to describe these sentient beings. And they are essentially, I think, either all of them or a lot of them, or I don't know whether it's a mix or what. But they are we know for a fact that Satan himself, the king of the currently of earth, was an angel who became a beast. So it makes sense that the rest of the fallen angels are various types of beasts that develop, whether they're the canine aliens, the reptilians, the insectoids, all these different types of sentient beasts that are most of all these UFOs and stuff, and also they may be underground, whatever, but they are fallen angels, and they are essentially working for Satan, and they are not our friend. Now, most of them. It's important to include, and I can continue to include, that they are. It is a complex situation. They are not all our enemies, as Scripture tells us that. In fact, they are so much so considered men, even though they're beasts, that they are even woven into the house of the Jews, which are the highest order of being, which is God is a Jew and a man. So they are bred into the house of the Jews, as the Scripture tells us. So, and that's in the future, as the nation of the true nation of Israel is established. So it's a complex situation, but people that are, I think that people that are going to make it are able to parse it out. God will give it into their mind to not be closed-minded and simple and scorning, and saying, oh, they're all just one thing, blah, 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 no aliens, there's only demons, that kind of thing. You have to be, God. I think that the true elect and the person who really is going to serve God, is really going to do His 10 Commandments, will also be given a reasonable mind, an open mind, to know that it is a complex situation. You can't just say it's all one thing. You have to be, and you have to realize that it's a vast and highly complex situation, which it's difficult to wrap our heads around. But I would say the bottom line is this: this situation is a controlled situation, okay? God has complete control over everything that's happening, as terrible and as incomprehensible as it might be. So if you're a TI and you're wondering, you really want to be successful against who's doing this to you, you really want to know who's doing this to you, you really want to win this, okay? I'm telling you, there is one way, one single way, okay? It's the way of acknowledging your Creator by acknowledging Jesus Christ, okay? The whole thing of Jesus Christ on the cross and the whole cross symbol and everything, that is God's way of unifying all the people that will turn to their Creator and say, okay, you created me, show me what you want from me, show me what to do, because you have the keys of life and what we need to be happy. And your God and your word even says that you have the way of happiness. For the promise in your word says that you are offering a life free of pain, free of sorrow, and free of death. All those former things are passed away. So you can't beat that, friends, because He's saying no more pain and no more sorrow, okay? You can't beat that. So if you're looking for the answer for your stalking, you're looking for the solution, the win. How do you win this? You're not winning it without Jesus Christ. Okay, that's the name He has given among men, the only name by which we might be saved, by which we might win this whole thing. Don't you want to win? Say that prayer to Jesus. Just say a simple prayer. Just say, Father in heaven, Save my soul by the work of your Son, Jesus Christ, on the cross, and show me your pure words in the authorized King James Bible.